So in light of the recent forest fire situation in California, I thought it'd be interesting to revisit an early book on forestry management and forestry approaches. The Dixie Fire and Caldor fires in California right now total, at this point in time, are somewhere around 900,000 acres, so significant amount of forest on fire. This book is one that was published by the Civilian Conservation Corps in 1937. The Civilian Conservation Corps, CCC, was started in 1933 as part of the recovery from the Great Depression as a jobs program, and it ended in 1942. Interestingly, General MacArthur actually ran a portion of this program with Army Reserve officers, and a lot of early World War II recruitment into the Army drew heavily on CCC leadership and leadership training. So kind of an interesting thing there that bridged between World War I and II. The CCC also inspired a number of state-level initiatives over the years, including the California Conservation Corps and a few others. So what's kind of neat about this is it goes through forestry practices as implemented in the mid-1930s, and was, as it says, intended to be an aid to the work of the Civilian Conservation Corps. And I am going to skip over a lot of this because you can find copies online at archive.org and others. But the discussion around forestry protection and practices is kind of interesting in the context of our fires. They point out that man is the forest enemy, and I sometimes have trouble disagreeing with that. What's interesting here, though, as they talk about forest fires from natural causes, man-made causes, etc., during 1926 to 1930, they talk about 150,000 fires occurring, and around 41 million acres burned each year. So at this point in time in the United States, the largest acreage, largest fire impact was in the U.S. South. And if I take a quick zoom in here, hopefully we can see that. So the South, over that period of time, from 1926 to 30, burned 37 million acres. The Pacific Coast region burned 1.3 million. And that's kind of interesting because this entire thing is almost inverted. Wildfires are still a consideration and concern east of the Mississippi River, but far, far more so west. And it's interesting comparing acreage burned over 1926 to 30, so 4 fire seasons in the U.S. West, on the Pacific Coast region, being 1.3 million acres. And right now in California alone, we have exceeded that acreage for the 2021 fire season, I'm sure by far. I'm guessing that the Dixie and Caldor fires, unfortunately, before they're out, will have exceeded that. So what's interesting in this book, too, is that the methods of fighting fires haven't really changed much at all. They go through and they point out shoveling out fire lines and dealing with mattocks, axes, all the regular hand tools that you'd see a fire crew anywhere in the western United States using. While the tools have been upgraded significantly, the techniques are pretty much the same as they've been for about 100 years. And what was interesting to me, too, is this picture. So this is a marvelous photo. It shows a hand crew working in the mid-1930s, and what they're doing in the mid-1930s looks virtually identical to what a crew on the Caldor or Dixie or any other fire hand crew is going to be doing today. I think the only big difference is that today's crews are better equipped. They operate with better training, better safety equipment, and better support, both aerially and on the ground. So this is actually probably the most interesting part of this book, not so much because what it includes, but because of what it leaves out. This is the only section of the book that talks about fighting fire with fire, and it is talking about fuel control in the context of lighting backfires. So imagining this book as your fire area, if you have an approaching fire front and you cut a line, often you will wait for ideal wind and humidity conditions to start burning out some of the undergrowth here and minimizing the fuel load to slow the fire down as it approaches your line. Anything you can do there gives you a better chance of preventing that fire from jumping the line. So it's interesting that they talk about fighting fire with fire only in that context. They're not talking about fuel control in the off season, outside of fire season. They're not talking about fire as a natural part of forestry management. Fires, we understand at this point, and I don't think we did when this book was published, that fires really are a symbiotic part of the existence of particularly western forests. Fires release seeds so that new trees can grow. Low-level, constant, I don't want to say constant, but every few year burning out of underbrush is a natural part of the forest's existence across a lot of the western U.S. And that kind of burning, that undergrowth burning as opposed to in the tree crown, really does manage fuels pretty well and prevents a crowning fire from screaming through significant acreage. So I think our practices now are far better than they used to be, but this book kind of reflects what the practices were from the early portions of forestry management in the United States to probably as recently as the 60s, where we then started to understand the value of allowing that natural cycle to actually occur with a little bit more freedom. But off my high horse, the other interesting things that I kind of found thumbing through this book again was firefighting equipment. The equipment hasn't changed much. We've gotten better hand tools. We've also eliminated the use of horses and mules in building fire lines. We are all on bulldozers at this point with incredibly skilled operators. So the really fun thing that I found in this book was this woodcut illustration, and this is a gorgeous woodcut here that really reminds me of one of Tolkien's Ents. If you've ever seen the original illustrations within those books, absolutely marvelous with the face and the hands and everything. What's interesting is that this book predates Tolkien's release of his trilogy, and kind of gives us an indication that that whole idea of a mythical living being in the forest, being one or of the trees, existed in mythology even before Tolkien, and is a strong enough idea through history and through those who've lived and worked tightly within forests that it actually made this book. And I'd like to think that this was an opportunity for some artist in the Depression to exercise their skills and share a little bit of that humanity that one regains with some nice time in the woods. So anyway, interesting book, and very much worth taking a thumb through if you want a little bit more on fire history and firefighting approaches. I know I'm jumping into some controversy with this, so please understand I'm just trying to share some history and to the approximately 18,000 people in the western U.S. Currently fighting all the active fires. Thank you. Thank you for keeping our homes safe, and best of luck as hopefully the season comes to a close in the next month or two. So CCC Forestry, circa 1937. If I can find a link on archive.org or Library of Congress or similar, I will share it below. If not, then not. Thank you.